Hey guys, so what was your irrational fear as a child?
The piled up clothes that was on my chair, and I thought it was moving and looking at me.
I know I'm not alone here, but I thought quicksand was going to be a more widespread problem. I even had plans to throw rocks down to check for safety on questionable ground that I thought might swallow me whole. Edit. Credit where it's due. The Princess Bride is solely responsible for this childhood fear of mine.
My siblings convinced me that Medusa lived in our attic.
LOL, escalators were my nemesis. I always imagined that if I didn't step off at exactly the right moment, I'd be sucked into the machinery below.
The idea of being sucked down the bathtub drain was a constant source of stress during bath time. No matter how many times my parents reassured me, I never truly believed I was too big to fit.
I was convinced that if I slept with any part of my body hanging off the bed, something from under the bed would grab me. Edit. Ha ha ha. Everyone knows to hide under the blankets. They're a force field after all.
Mirrors in the dark. I avoided looking at them because I thought I'd see something or someone staring back at me that wasn't really there. Especially after saying Bloody Mary 3 times.
Clowns. And yet as an adult, they still exist for some god-forsaken reason. At least I don't live in Chicago.
I was afraid to look in the mirror. I was sure if I looked my reflection would start doing stuff that I wasn't doing.
I was terrified of the vacuum cleaner. I thought it would come to life and chase me around the house like some sort of dust-sucking monster.
My grandparents did not have indoor plumbing, so we had to use an outhouse. I was always afraid there would be a raccoon or something down there that would claw or bite my butt.
I had an irrational fear of thunderstorms, convinced that each one was definitely going to produce a tornado that would come directly for our house. Living in Oklahoma, definitely not for the faint of heart.
I was scared of shadows on the wall. My imagination would turn them into all sorts of creatures waiting to jump out at me.
The deep end of the swimming pool. I was convinced there were sharks waiting just out of sight, ready to pull me under.
That I had an evil twin who would try and make me go bye-bye. I thought they were chained in the attic.
Getting one of my shoelaces stuck in an escalator, oh man. Always had to do that little jump at the end.
That a snake would come up the toilet and bite me. Sadly on Team Hufflepuffer over here, not Slytherin.
The Unsolved Mysteries theme music for me. Diddy done. Well, you know how it sounds. Too eerie for me.
The moon falling on me.
Driving on a bridge over a large body of water. I couldn't swim at the time, and I was petrified that our vehicle would fall in. When the ship hit the bridge in Baltimore last week, it all came rushing back. Yet at the same time, I wouldn't want to be driving over the 120-foot elevated bridge in Japan, Eshima Ohashi.
I had sleep paralysis whenever I was younger, and when it was happening I was trying to yell for my mom, but I couldn't move or anything. I had bunk beds at that time with nobody above me, so for some time I was always scared about what could potentially be on the top bunk. Even in college, whenever Marshall brought Lily over, the whole bed frame would be shaking.
I was afraid that when I was in the bath, a whale would suddenly appear out of thin air and eat me. This was shortly after seeing Pinocchio, back in 1940 AD. I never told my parents about this because, even as a small child, I knew it was bananas. So, I just continued to take baths while fully terrified.
Same for me, but Jaws. Terrified that the shark would find its way through my toilet and eat me while I took a piss, I always left the door open, light on and ready to dash for the door. It felt like I was having panic attacks while taking a pee-pee sometimes.
Birds. Still, birds. Growing up on a farm with chickens, guineas and turkeys was no treat. All I wanted to do was pet the cute birdies, but they just wanted to bite my keister.
I used to think kids who were afraid of birds were ridiculous, but as an adult I totally respect it now. Flying dinosaurs? It makes sense. Let them do their thing.
I had a fear of broccoli. Edit. Hahaha. Thanks for agreeing and validating my fear, y'all.
Well, I had a fear when I was a preteen, but I guess it still counts, being pregnant. I got my first period when I was 11. Every time my cycle was late, I worried about being the new Virgin Mary. I swear on my life I was so worried I cried sometimes, but never told anyone about this fear because it was too embarrassing. It literally makes sense while there are so many of those teen mom TV shows and spin-offs. It sure do get wild.
When I was in high school, I had a dream that I was pregnant and I told my mom, but I've never had sex before, and she said, well, sometimes it happens. It definitely stuck around in my intrusive thoughts for longer than I cared for.
Dying in my sleep and God sending me straight to heck. For, reasons.
I remember there being a photo of me as a baby blissfully eating a bowl full of crab meat and prawns. Then I got sent to church and told eating shellfish gets you sent straight to hell. I thought that was very unfair, seeing I had been a baby with no control over what I was fed. I guess it's that Catholic guilt again.
Showering. My father once told me about Nazi showers, and I was terrified to shower for years because I thought he was trying to kill me. Disclaimer, watch out for that new documentary Zone of Interest. It's about that crazy psycho Rudolfo and his wife.
After watching Jaws, I was terrified of my waterbed. Should have gotten the Lightning McQueen like all the cool kids instead.
OMG, this happened to me too. Swimming lessons, I was so annoying to the other kids. I knew there were no sharks in the pool, but what if? Then at night, sometimes, I would begin thinking about them in my waterbed.
I thought self-flushing toilets were gonna suck me in booty first. Like I'd for real cry, and my mom would have to let me hold on to her if a public bathroom had self-flushing toilets when I went.
I would lay awake in my bed at night for hours, drenched in sweat. My fear? An asteroid impacting Earth and killing everyone. Sorry. But that's what an N.D. Tyson-inspired brainiac thinks of.
Moths, because one time as a child of 8 years old, I inhaled one and I could feel it fluttering in my throat/mouth. To be honest, I'm still scared of moths.
Me too, I am now 70 and disappear from a room if one enters. Especially considering the fact that flies can get into your eyes and even lay eggs.
After watching X-Files as a kiddo, I was absolutely, 100% certain, every single night, that it was the night I was going to be abducted by aliens. I would lay there before sleeping, expected to see those gray faces in my window. On a plus note, at least the thought of G.G. Anderson kept me happy and watching more. Literally still hasn't aged.
I didn't want Chucky to come for me. I never understood how other kids went to his arcade to play games.
Lions would come into the house as I slept at night. That boy Scar really got into my head. Only Mufasa could save me.
Sudden fires. My mom lived in a tiny duplex for a short time, and my brother and I shared a room. I distinctly remember her telling us that if there was a fire at night, to break our window and get out in the backyard. The only problem was that the backyard was full of dry weeds nearly as tall as we were, so my little overthinker brain stayed awake, trying to figure out what could be used to break the window and how we could get over the back fence before the entire yard went up in flames.
I remember being told that when we stayed at our grandparents' house, I slept on a top bunk, so I once figured it would take a few minutes to get down onto the floor, find something to break the window, wake up my siblings and escape, so I decided the smart thing to do was break the window now, kick out all the broken glass, so at least that part was done. Funnily enough, the adults did not agree with my reasoning after I explained why I had done it on the way to get my feet sewn up at the hospital. Well, Got to practice some way.
I was so goddamn afraid of getting drafted into war. My uncle got drafted into Vietnam, and for most of my childhood, I always just assumed I would get forced into a war I didn't care about too. Gave me nightmares of getting shot to bye-bye in a jungle for years. But that boy LBJ. He's a double-bucking monster of a human. I don't care how jumbo his red banana was when he flashed others, or if he signed off on the Great Society. Edit. Please don't watch those old TV programs of birthdays getting chosen to be drafted. We'll never know when WW3 coming.
I decided when I was a teenager if I had kids and they got drafted I would shoot them in the foot so they couldn't go, and risk being shot. Not all of us had Daddy Trump get us a doctor to diagnose us with some of those fancy diseases you got growing up in country clubs.
Not sure if it's irrational, but I was scared to death of swallowing my own tongue because I heard people that were in accidents did that. Edit. It's real, guys, just like people afraid of water when they get rabies. The body does what it gon' do.